Hello, and welcome to the Jesus and a Cup of Joe podcast, the show that brings you a conversation about Jesus, the Bible, and life. Here is your host, Royce Bottoms.
Hey, welcome to today's show. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and spending it with me. Hopefully you got you a cup of coffee. It's hot, it's ready to go, and we'll get started with Jesus and a Cup of Joe. Now, do something I don't normally do is I wanted to start off with today's show with a story. It's a story of a conversation I had with a young lady yesterday, and I say young lady, she's in her extremely early 20s. She's a student. She's going to school, studying internal medicine. And we had a conversation. Well, we had a string of conversations, I should say. And we covered topics like history, politics, religion, and current events. And the thing is this young lady's from Nigeria. She's been here in the States for, I think, about 15 years. And it was a very interesting conversation because we discussed, like I said, politics, the political environment. We discussed current events with protesting and rioting that's going on. And then we got into history. And we started talking about history, whether it's going to continue to be erased out of the books that they're teaching kids today in school. And then we got into slavery, and we just started discussing slavery, which I found was very interesting because, like I said, this young lady was from Nigeria, and we were just listening to each other's views and opinions and points, and it was very productive. I enjoyed the conversation, and we learned a lot about each other through our conversation, but out of that, I said something about slavery that I've never thought before, never had it cross my mind, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Now, as I said, this woman is going to school. She's in college for internal medicine, but we were discussing, and I said, you know what? I said, anybody today that has any debt upon them are considered slaves to that debt. We're in bondage. We are locked down until we get that debt paid. I said, whether it be owning a vehicle, a house, school debt, credit card debt, whatever the case may be, if we have debt that we are beholding to another person or an organization, I said, we're in slavery. And I said, it's sad but we're all in slavery. And her eyes got real big, and she says, I've never seen it that way before. And I started chuckling, and I said, neither have I. I said, I just learned something myself. I said, but the way to get out of debt, I said, is trying to figure out how to do some type of financial plan, I would assume. She goes, yeah, you're right. She goes, but the thing that worries me the most is, what is my future going to hold? And I said, that's an interesting question that you just asked. What worries you is, what is your future going to hold? I said, I worry about things too all the time. I worry about a lot of things that are out of my control. I said, but I turn it over to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I don't have to worry about this as much. I still do because I'm human. I'm still going to worry. I said, but I try to not worry as much. And that's when she started telling me about when she found Jesus, and that started that conversation. And like I said, this went on for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then we both went our separate ways. But I share all that with you today because we're all worrying about something. This is September. We're in the middle of September. We've went through an awful lot this past year to get to where we're at today. And if you're like me, you're probably worrying about something. How is the bills going to get paid? What is going to happen when Christmas comes around? What's the rest of this year going to be like? Is my kid going to be able to do good on online school learning? You're worrying about something. And if worrying was a professional sport, we would all be the MVPs of worrying. When we worry, we allow our minds to dwell on difficult situations, overwhelming fears, and stress that weights us down and causes us just physical and emotional harm. Now, if you've listened to a radio or seen the television, you've seen the commercials, I think from the weight loss companies, I'm not real sure some of their names, but now they're saying the pandemic pounds. First, I remember growing up and it was the freshman 15. For when you got into college, you were so stressed you were going to put on about 15 pounds because you were going to eat everything under the sun. So now it's the pandemic pounds. And, everybody's saying, hey, come join our program. We'll help you lose this weight. We'll help you get healthy. We'll help you do this, do that. Okay, whatever. Not judging. I know I put on pandemic pounds, stress eating. And that's what it is. It's stress. It's stress of, how's my job? How's my family? How's my friends? How's my financial situation? Um, you know, can I go to church? Can I not go to church? Can I vote? Can I not vote? What's happening? And then, of course, turn on the television and you're just bombarded with so much worrying and stress coming through the speakers that it drives you insane. We tend to worry on what matters to us the most, and we place it higher than we place God in our life. We have extra amount of pressure put on us. We're under stress. We worry about things that stress us out. We are facing things that, like I said, at work, at home, families or friends, fears that overtakes us, that overcomes us, that starts to affect us. When we're stressed, we look for ways to cope. We choose denial, or we may choose some types of substance or something to help us cope with the stress. Some people turn to drinking. Some people may turn to recreational drugs. Some people may turn to binge eating. Some people may turn to lashing out at others. When we allow worry and stress to get in our lives, it disrupts the entire balance of our life. Imagine that worry is a fire. The more you allow worry to occupy your thoughts, the more fuel you're putting into that fire. The more you do this, the bigger the fire will get. And eventually you're going to have to put that fire out. But if you allow it to get out of control, it's very difficult to put it out. We don't need to worry at all. If you think of it this way, if we did not worry, think about how much extra time every day we would have in our lives to devote on other things of positive and uplifting and encouragement and things that could actually make the difference. In Matthew 6, Jesus continues his Sermon on the Mount, and he begins in chapter 5 and extends through to the end of chapter 7. And in the popular teaching, Jesus gives us instructions about prayer, anger, adultery, as well as other topics. But he just finished speaking about money and possessions when he journeys into the topic of worry. Matthew 6:24-25, and it reads, No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be a slave to money. That is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life. Jesus tells us not to worry because we are so consumed with worrying and stress. He tells us not to worry because he's ultimately in control. But we don't want to do that. We worry about things and we get stressed out and we allow it to affect us physically and emotionally. We let it affect us spiritually, and it drains us and it tears us down and it destroys our life. Jesus tells us over in Matthew 11:28. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all that are weary and carry heavy burdens, for I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle in heart. You will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and my burdens I will give you as light." Jesus tells us in Matthew to come and seek rest. We cannot worry about today. We can't worry about tomorrow. The things that are going on in this world may be out of your control. Worrying about your finances, worrying about your family, worrying about your friends and the circumstances around you will be overwhelming and consuming, and it will do nothing but to break you down. And at the end of the day, you're going to end up as just a really messed up mess. You need to understand that God is in control. There are times in our lives when we do have legitimate concerns about the things that we're heading into, or that we're about to run into, or that we may be in already. But we need to realize and reflect back to Philippians 4:19, where God tells us he will supply every need of yours according to his riches in the glory of Jesus Christ. If we would take all the energy that we put toward worrying and having stress in that worrying fire that I spoke about, if we took all the time and energy that we give to it and actually gave it to God, it would be amazing of what the difference would be in our lives. As I'm sitting here today talking to you, I can tell you my past, I have been such a worrying person that I have stressed myself out on many occasions. There was times in my life where I saw more money going out of my account than what was coming in, and there was no way the bills were going to get paid. When I looked online at my bank account, it had a negative, and it was red numbers telling me there was no money in that account. And be worrying about, Lord, how am I going to pay this truck payment? How am I going to put groceries on the table? How am I going to put this? How am I going to pay for that? And it took God saying, stop. I'm in control. Quit worrying. I have this. Stop running around with your hair on fire. I have it all under control. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, as I am sitting here today, I have to do nothing but raise my hands up to heaven and thank God for everything that he has done, he's doing, and that he will do. Because if it wasn't for him, the bills would have never got paid. It wasn't nothing that Royce did. It was what God did. Because when that negative in those red numbers was on that bank account, verified, knowing that there wasn't any money, knowing that the bills were coming in, and all of a sudden the bills were paid, that's God. That's not me. We cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve money and focus all your time and attention to money and valuable things and worries and all of that, and then also try to serve God. You can't do it. As I just said a few moments ago, if you'll take all the energy that you are putting toward the money and you give it to God, oh, the riches and the blessings I believe you would see in your life. The 180 that would happen in your life, the turnaround, the storm clouds leaving and the sun's coming up and the birds are singing. I truly believe that that's what would happen. How do you do that? How can I do that, you may ask? First and foremost, Give your life over to Jesus. First and foremost, give it over to Jesus. Accept Jesus as your Savior. Invite Him into your life. Turn your life around and follow Him. That's the most important thing, is to follow Jesus, to listen to the words that Jesus will speak into your heart. Read the living words from the Bible. Live your life according to God's purpose and not yours. I don't know what the future holds for you. I don't know what the future holds for me. But as long as I put my faith and my trust into Jesus and I follow the Lord, let Him lead me where He needs me, not where I want to go. Just as every bill or every problem that comes my way, I'm going to worry and I'm going to stress. It's human nature. But as long as I know that I'm walking beside Jesus, I know that I'm protected and He will help me through the situation. Because don't miss this, what I'm about to say. He will get you through your situation. But I do believe, and I'm living proof, that He will teach you along the way to help you be stronger for the next situation that you face. We can't put out the fires in our lives by ourselves. We need help. And the help is Jesus. The help is the Lord. So today I'm asking you, are you willing to stop worrying and stressing and go to the cross and turn it over to Jesus? Lay it at the foot of the cross and know that your Savior will help you through your worrying and situations of whatever may come through the remainder of 2020 and beyond. And then that way you can go out and tell a story to someone else and help them about worrying, about stress, and about this man named Jesus and what all He can do for you. I want to thank you so much for joining me here today at Jesus and a Cup of Joe. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting this podcast, for sharing this podcast with family and friends. I want to invite all of you to follow us on my social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. But until we meet again, just remember, you always start your day with Jesus and a Cup of Joe. God bless.